I'm Charisse LeClaire. The September 9th primary is right around the corner, and we want you to be informed. CBS 3 Springfield, the Republican, MassLive.com, and New England Public Radio have joined together to bring you a detailed look at the candidates running for public office. Now here's the Republicans' Robert-rizzuto to introduce us to candidates running for office here in Western Massachusetts.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this edition of the 2014 Campaign Roundtable series. I'm politics reporter Robert-rizzuto, and before we meet the candidates today, I'd like to introduce you to our panel of journalists. We have New England Public Radio's Karen Brown and the Republicans' chief editorial writer, Ron Chamelis. Thank you both for joining us today.
Thank you.
And to my left, we have the three Democratic candidates running to be the next state treasurer of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. First to my left is State Senator Barry-Finegold of Andover. To his left is State Representative Tom Conroy of Wayland. And to his left is Deb Goldberg, a former selectman in the town of Brookline. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for having us, Rob.
Certainly, certainly. So we will jump right into things here and get moving. The first question relates to casinos, which is obviously a very big topic here in Western Massachusetts as well as across the Commonwealth. So in 2011, the law was passed that allowed for the licensing of up to 3 resort-style casinos and 1 slots parlor. There's a repeal effort underway. All 3 of you have come out in favor of the repeal effort. So basically what we'd like to know is, let's say the repeal is successful. How will the Commonwealth account for this already projected loss of revenue that's factored into the 2015 fiscal year budget? And most importantly, how will they account for the loss of the 10% gaming revenue that was supposed to go to lower the state's debt burden going forward? And for this question, Deb, we can actually start with you down at the end here.
Well, I think that when the calculations were made, they were some fictitious calculations that were done, but we also know that the lottery will take a 10% decline in revenue if the casinos were to come in. I fundamentally oppose casino gambling because from my point of view, coming from a business background, I don't believe that that is long-term sustainable economic growth. I mean, the unions who are supporting me are pro-casino, but they understand my point of view. I mean, 103 and the Teamsters are very active in the pro-casino movement. But, you know, on a personal level, I experienced within my greater family, my boyfriend's brother-in-law succumbed to addictive gambling when I was at a very impressionable age, and I was about 20 years old, and I can see the negative downside of it. But also, as the steward of the lottery, those are the $1 billion in annual unrestricted funds to every city and town. Now, cities and towns doesn't mean inanimate buildings. It means people. No one projected the kind of snow removal we would need this past year. No one had that in their budget. It comes from the funds that come from the lottery. And so I believe in, sustainable economic growth that we can count on over a long period of time. And I have some real issues with casino gambling being the mecca of that. I don't believe that that is what will happen in the long run.
Do you think the projections were oversold, if you will?
Well, I think that's coming to fruition as more information comes to light. I mean, there were members of the legislature who pointed that out. In fact, Tom is one of them. But he is right on that, and we all agree on that. So I think that as someone who is hoping to be treasurer in the near-term future, I have to realistically look at where we're going to be, not hopeful about where revenues will come from. And I do know that the $1 billion to every single community in this state, they rely on. Mm-hmm. They absolutely rely on. And a 10% hint for them is not a good thing.
That's right. Tom, on the topic of the revenue projections, what's your take on this?
Well, it's a great question, Rob, and thanks for asking it. It's something that I studied rather diligently back in 2007 and 8 when the casino issue came up, and I was on the Economic Development Committee. And what I did was I did a cost-benefit analysis. I really studied this. I gathered the facts, talked to stakeholders, did the analysis, crunched the numbers. It's sort of my approach to a lot of different challenges that we face as a Commonwealth and some of the things that I want to do as a treasurer. And what that cost-benefit analysis showed was actually the hit to the lottery is going to be higher than 10%. It's going to be more like 20 or 25% through secondary research that I did. And I also saw that there were other industries that had greater potential for us right at the same time. And we were debating all this at the legislature. The life sciences and biotech industry, which I was a big part of crafting that law, and it's really led to a boom in Massachusetts. The clean tech, green energy expansion, and that whole industry where we've made some key investments, and that has grown dramatically here in Massachusetts. So in a sense, we were looking at a choice. You know, do you want to invest in the casino industry, the biotech industry, or the green energy? I went for 2 out of 3. In part, that's a real differentiator for me, because I did the homework. I've studied this issue and I've done the analysis, and I stand by that. I didn't change my position over the time. And then lastly, what again differentiates me here is I'm ready to tackle this issue going forward. If we have casinos, and we may, and Springfield may get a casino, I am still concerned about the amount of local aid that can go through the lottery to Springfield and surrounding communities that are so reliant on that local aid. I'm the one who has a plan in place to mitigate that loss in lottery revenue so that cities and towns are made whole. And again, that's what sets me apart in this race.
Sure. Barry, on the topic of casinos here and looking at the projections.
Thank you for having us on, and I appreciate the Media Consortium for giving us all some time to speak about the issues and what we want to do with the Treasurer's Office. I want to echo what Deb and Tom said, that we have the most successful lottery in the country. We do $5 billion a year. You look at California, they're 7 times bigger than we are? They do $6 billion a year. So we have the most successful lottery in the country. We net about $1 billion. Of that, basically all of it goes to, local aid. Best case scenario, with 3 casinos and a racetrack, we might get $400 to $600 million. Only 25% of that is dedicated to going back to local communities. So I don't think at the end of the day, local communities are going to see the benefit they think they are. We also need to ask ourselves the question, what is happening in Atlantic City? How could someone build a casino like the Revel and shut down, 3 years later? So I think we have to have our eyes wide open. There are only so many gaming dollars out there. And what I'm concerned about is I represent, as a senator, the city of Lawrence. The money is going to come from somewhere, and I'm concerned about what these casinos are going to do to people that can, I think, least afford to be gambling. So I understand the challenges of economic development. When you represent a city like Lawrence, you understand the challenges of economic development like Springfield. But what I want to do is I want to try to provide more entrepreneurship. I want to try to provide more capital for low-cost loans. And I think that is how we can have more economic development. That's how we can get more people back to work. Because, as representing the city of Lawrence, we have an unemployment rate that's very high, much higher than the statewide average, and we got to get people back to work. And I believe my background as a state senator and my background in the private sector, I believe I can help cities like Springfield get more people back to work.
Gotcha. So you're all opposed to casinos, support the repeal effort, and have your own plans going forward should things come down one way or another. Yeah. I guess you got to be prepared for any possibility, right?
That's right.
All right. Well, thank you, guys. And we will jump right into the next question here. This kind of focuses a little bit on the current treasurer, Steve Grossman. He's had a very active presence, not just in Springfield, but really across the Commonwealth. He's really kind of consistently traveled and worked on projects with local leaders. I know here in Springfield specifically, he worked with the legislature to pass an amendment that allowed for 100% reimbursement for 2 tornado-damaged schools here. And I know that locally that was a huge, huge thing. And had he not been so proactive with reaching out and working with local leaders, if he would have just been in his Beacon Hill bunker, if you will, these types of bridge building probably wouldn't have happened. So what we'd like to know is, if you happen to be the candidate that takes office, this coming year, will you carry on in that tradition? And if so, talk a little bit about bridges you've already built across the state. And just for this one, Barry, we can start with you on this end.
Yeah. Well, I think the reason why I have people like Senator Welch, Senator Kinderas, Representative Curran supporting my campaign is because of the fact that I've been out here, been to the Springfield area quite a bit. I understand the challenges that they face. And one of the things that I want to do is that, right now the best a city like Springfield can get is 80% reimbursement rate. I like to try to find a way to get our cities back to what they used to be, which is a 90% reimbursement rate. I think cities like Springfield and Lawrence need those types of reimbursement rate to build their schools. As it is between police and fire, it is so hard to fund our municipalities, especially with a limited commercial tax base. So what I want to do as your next state treasurer, I want to work with the legislature and try to find ways, just like Steve Grossman did in these certain issues with tornadoes, but on a normal basis, I want to make sure that we can try to help out our gateway cities like Springfield and try to get their reimbursement rates back up to 90%. And I think that could be huge for cities like this and also some of the other gateway cities across the Commonwealth.
Gotcha. All right. Tom, on this very important topic.
It is a very important topic, and what is going to draw me around the state everywhere, and I'm going to be very proactive, perhaps even more proactive than Steve, is because I've got state reps who are supporting me in this race, over 50 of them all around the state. For example, all 4 Berkshire County state reps are supporting me. Ben Swan, right here in Springfield, supporting me. Folks up and down the Connecticut River Valley. These are my friends. These are my colleagues. These are people that I want to work with and partner with. And I am going to be out in this area of Western Massachusetts all the time as the next treasurer, seeing how we can create jobs, seeing how we can create educational opportunities for people, rebuild more of the schools. That's the other thing. The Mass School Building Authority that the treasurer manages is going to take me out and about all throughout the Commonwealth. And I look at that as a great opportunity to share and learn. Share what I have to bring as the treasurer in terms of MSBA support for school districts to rebuild and renovate schools at very high reimbursement rates if needed. Share best practice financial management, which taps into my public and private sector background that really differentiates me from the others in this race. And also learn from local communities about their priorities, their concerns, and how I can partner with them to grow the economy, create new jobs, and improve educational opportunities for everybody.
Gotcha. Thanks, Tom. Deb, on the topic
Well,
of being treasurer for the Commonwealth.
Yes, as I shared with you, out of the 3 of us, I'm probably the only one who actually, if I wanted to spend time with my dad, was in Springfield. My dad lived in Springfield, downtown, in the Travelodge, ran the Stop and Shop stores out here. I'm the only one in this race who's actually been in business all over the state. And that's why when I go to any area, I'm so familiar with the personalities and the needs of those areas. Met with the mayor of New Bedford, and he said, you know, we're not like the greater Boston area. And I said, oh no, I know that. Fall River, New Bedford, Providence, Southeast region. And he said, yeah, how did you know? And I said, because that's the way we looked at it when we were at Stop and Shop, and that's where I worked. So from the very success of our business was that we were always in the stores. My grandfather was in the stores of Stop and Shop till 3 months before he died at 85 from lung cancer. And that's who I am. I've been at the schools that got the 100% reimbursement. And I helped teachers set up their classrooms that day. And we talked about curriculum. It's very exciting and very necessary. But I've also been in the Pickering School in Lynn, where they can't open and close the windows, and believe me, there's no air conditioning. I was in Fall River the other day, and that school's needs aren't being met. $600 million a year that comes through school building assistance for schools is not enough to catch up on the backlog that's occurred over deferred maintenance for years and years and years. And yet we expect our kids to develop 21st century skills. How? When there are no science labs, or the science equipment is from 1970 and it sits there broken. First of all, how do we excite them about learning? And second of all, how do we get the job done? I am going to be proposing, and I know it's an uphill battle, that we only have one state-owned bank in this country, but other urban states are now looking together about a state-owned bank, and I see that being targeted towards schools, towards infrastructure, towards transportation. Every 4 years when we have a governor's race, we hear about South Coast Rail, we hear about new roads and new bridges, but it doesn't happen because we're barely making it in terms of services. So we really need to be excited and different to look for ways in which to fund these things, because it's so important, and particularly for the schools.
Gotcha. So all 3 candidates pledged to be active and involved, not just in Boston, but across the state. All right, thank you very much. And we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with more from the candidates in just a moment.